Hello, CIS30A. In this video, I'm gonna go over Lab 3, exercise 16. This is the new exercise that I implemented for students who are interested in data science. So we are going to do a little bit of data analysis. And for the students in cybersecurity, this is also important too, because sometimes you need to be able to access logs, which is in data format. And so we wanted to be able to use file operation and be able to display the data as graph. So I'm going to go ahead and begin going over exercise 16 requirement. And we will go through the process of programming and be able to analyze and graph the data using Python. So in exercise 16, we will use file operation, which entails opening the file, and our file is going to be in CSV for comma separated files. So this is normally the format that you would see. Sometime that will be database file, but in this case, in general, most of your data comes in CSV format. And this file I obtained from Kaggle. So it is for practice. And if you're interested, Kaggle has a lot of different data sets that you can use to be able to practice using Python or even R. So we are to open the CSV file and to be able to access the data set and visualize it, meaning that we're going to graph it and we're going to analyze it. So we're going to just simply do a min-max with this to find the minimum and the maximum value of a certain column. So the first step that you need to do is to download the data set. So going back to our assignment, you will find the data set here. So make sure that you click the symbol to download, and the file that you're going to have is going to be marvel.csv. This is the data set that I acquired from Kaggle, as I mentioned before. Now, if you want to create your data set in CSV, you simply would use Excel or Google Sheets to be able to put in your data in column and then fill out the data. But then when you are done, you can save it as a .csv instead of a .excel or Excel in other format. Okay. So now, once you download, it's very important that you put this file that you downloaded in the same folder as your Python script for this exercise. Again, it's very important that you save your CSV file in the same folder as a Python file, because for the demonstration purposes, I did not include instruction on how to add the path of your file. And just to minimize the confusion and the problem that you will face, we want to make sure that our file that we're using is going to be in the same place, in the same folder as your Python script that we're writing. So here is my CSV file. And once you download it, you can take a look at it. It's very important that before you work with the data, look at the content. You will find that a lot of the data out there might have missing pieces of data. So you will have to clean it up. And that's part of the process in data science and data engineering, is that we are going to have to make sure that there are data that's clean. So in this file, it contains the data about Marvel movies. And then it gives you, each column contain different specific values here. So length, and then, but we're interested in looking at the revenue, the gross revenue in the US. And if you want, you can also look at the world, but this is the column that we're mostly going to analyze, just to make it simple for this exercise. So once I downloaded and saved my data, I would go ahead and begin my script or my Python code. And so you can use your IDE For the demonstration purposes, I'm going to use my Tani. And I want to show you how you can install certain module or library in Tani as well. So if you're using another IDE, make sure that you reference the instruction for the IDE on how to install module or libraries that's external. So now for the next step, we are to write the Python program that's going to open up our data set using the CSV file that we have downloaded and saved. It's going to read the data from the file. So we're going to access it and the file, and we're going to have it read the data. And as it reads the data in data analytics, you need to build the data frame. So that way it would understand what kind of data that you're working with, columns and rows. So once we have the frame, we're going to graph our data, we're going to plot it, and we're going to display the highest value for movie gross revenue in the US and the lowest values for movie gross in the US. So we're interested in looking at the highest gross, which movie made the most money in the US and which movie made the lowest in the US based on the given data. So I put a note here that you need to use Pandas, which is a package that you can obtain. It allows you to build the data frame and do a lot of analytics with this, like finding the min and max. And in the future, you might want to look at average or implement some kind of algorithm that has equations to be able to do more analysis. So Pandas is the module that you want to add. And then in order for us to really see the graph, we would use matplotlib module. And this is ideal for plotting. There are other libraries that are available for you to implement graphs and things like that. But matplotlib is one of the most popular one that you see. So I want to use that, as you will likely come across this if you get into some analysis portion using Python. And it is also available in other type of languages as well. So I put the link here for you to explore further if you want to try different things in Pandas and matplotlib. For those of you who are in computer science and also data science, you might see this if you're using Python. So the output for our exercise, we are to provide screen capture of our code and its output. So I want to go over this using Tani. And so as we are using the library, to install the module of the library on your IDE, like Tani, you normally would use some kind of package management options. So in Tani, you would click Tools, and you would manage plugins. In VS Code and other IDE, you would normally see a feature where you can search for a certain library and you can click Install. So make sure that you reference the IDE that you're using, their documentation, to be able to add the module and how to install. You can also go to Pandas documentation and matplotlib documentation and click on Get Started. So when you visit the website, you would see how to get started, and it will talk about how to install. But it's best if you're using an IDE to reference the IDE instruction on how to install the module. So very similar to our custom module, these are modules that were already created. They're Python files that we will bring in to make sure that certain functionality of our program works. So I'm going to go ahead and click Manage Plugins. Now, some of the libraries, you would see it as packages, but we're going to go ahead and click Manage Plugins. And here I want to search for Pandas. And you would see and we want to make sure that we click the right one. So once you find your library or your module that you want, you click on it, and we'll give you some general information. You would see an install button. Since I already installed it, I only have to uninstall. So you would click install, and it's going to take a couple seconds to go ahead and download and install directly from the PyPy repository. So you want to make sure that you locate it by searching. And once you found the module that you want to download and install in your IDE, you simply click install. And I would do the same thing for the second one, which is matplotlib, which is what you see with the import here. So I'm going to search for matplotlib. And then I would click the module and click install. You should see the install button down here. And then if you want to reference, you can go to their website, right? Get started, as I mentioned, and it will walk you through on how you can do directly in command line. If you're using Conda, you need to install it via Conda. I am not using Conda, so sometimes Anaconda is very specific. So if you're using Conda, this is how you would install. But for us, we can simply install it in the IDE itself by searching. And again, the step is to click Tools, Manage Plugins in Tani, search for your module, and then click it, and then click Install. Then make sure that you click Install. And then on the second one, so if you have many libraries that you're using, you gotta make sure that you install them all. Okay. And click install. And then we can look at the documentation. So next I'm going to explain the code or the script. So in this program, we're to read the data from our CSV file that we downloaded and save in the same folder as our script. We're going to graph it, and we're going to find the highest and the lowest revenue for the US gross for the movies. So the first part of this is to make sure that we are bringing in the modules or the library. So Panda is used to build data frame and to do some analysis. And then matplotlib is going to be used to graph or to plot. So I simply have an import statement to import in Pandas. This is the exact name for the module. And as I mentioned in the prior lecture videos, we're going to rename it as PD. And you would do this to kind of simplify for the scripting purposes. So that way it is easier to use the identifier with specific method that's coming from that library, or specific function that we would use coming from that library. Then for the second statement, I want to use matplotlib pyplot, which is allowing me to graph this in Python. And again, I'm going to give it an identifier PLT. So whatever that you identify it here for this particular library, you are going to use that identifier in your code. So once I import in my modules or my libraries, I would then need to define my object or my variable that's going to contain the content of my data or my file. So I need to bring in the data, and using Panda, you can use a function or a method called read CSV. This comes from Panda library. So this function allows us to open up the CSV file, and it works only with CSV. There are other functions with other type of files. So you are to use this function, and it's coming from Pandas, which is we re-identify it as PD. So we're going to read the CSV file. Then for me as a programmer, I want to confirm that it did it. So here I issue the print method to be able to see the content of my file that it had read. Then for the next part, what we want to do is, as part of the requirement, coming back here, we are to look at the max and the min value for the gross revenue in the US. And so if you look at the CSV file itself, we're interested in looking at what's the highest and the lowest value here from the data set. So with that, what we can do is we are going to display print. And I added the text so that way it shows me which is which, because I don't want to be confused low and high. So I'm going to put in the text, the lowest US gross revenue. And using the data frame, which we define here, you can put in the column name, which is gross_US from the CSV file itself. So if you want to make sure, right, you go back to the CSV, and this is the column name that we are using for analysis. So I'm looking at finding the minimum value from this column. So that means that I would say this data frame and this column, I'm going to look for the min or the minimum value using min method. And this is a built-in method from the Pandas module or library. So simply that you just tell it where it's coming from, which column, and which method you're using. So this is one way for us to display the minimum value or the minimum gross revenue from our data set. Second, another way is to be able to display a little bit more information, as in which movie, right, for which length, and that would have the lowest gross revenue. So sometime specifically we want to kind of drill down and look at, you know, possibly why is it the minimum gross, possibly maybe because it's too long, or is it too short, etc. So when you're doing it the second way, this way, it's actually displaying more information for that minimum gross revenue. It will give you the movie name, the length of the movie, and so basically it's going to display the entire row that would contain the lowest or the minimum gross revenue. So when you do it this way, you simply say DF, which is the name of our data frame, and you would make sure that you would put it into a list, because it has to go through and look at the row as a content that would have multiple pieces of information. So we might want to make sure that we would have a container that would give us more details in text compared to only one piece of information from the prior line. So here we want to make sure that it is a list. And inside this list, we want to say that this is the data frame, this is the column, and we want to say that it is, by using the double equal sign, the data frame and the column min. So we are interested in the row that contains the minimum value for the gross revenue in the US from that data frame. Again, this is going to give you more information. This is why we're using the list here. Compared to one piece of information, this is why we're just simply issue the method for that column. And repeat it, then we're going to find the maximum value for the gross revenue in the US from that column gross US. And the second way that we can do this is to display which movie at which length and so on for that would have the highest gross revenue in the US. So you can do either or both. I did this to kind of show you the difference. And so we would see that in the output. Now, it's important that you think about the procedure and how your program you want to display. Here, I want to show the min and the max before the graph, because if you put this section after the graph, you have to close the graph in order for it to go to the next step. So it is more effective for us to put the min and the max display of the values before our graph, so that way it would show the output with the graph. Otherwise, you have to close the graph and then be able to see the min and the max value. Okay, so the placement of this, you have to think about the sequence on how it goes from top to bottom for your program. Next, the next section, we're going to do the plot of our data. And so simply, we are going to use the data frame that we define up here on line 7. We're going to use the plot method from Pandas. That's the library that we're pulling that function from. And since I'm doing a 2D, I am going to use the X and Y coordinates. The horizontal, going horizontally, I'm going to have the movie name. So here you can see that's a column labeled movie with a capital M. So we want to make sure it's exactly like the column name. And then for vertically, I want to use Y coordinates for US, the gross revenue in the US. So I want to make sure that it matches my column name there. Okay, right here. And I'm only graphing these two so that way I have a cleaner plot, because if I want to add everything else, it's going to be a lot of mumbo jumbo. So it's hard to see. So I want to select the columns that would represent specific goal in my program. And then for the type of graph that I want to use, now you can play with this. I had used scatter, but it didn't come out very clean because it's overlapping with the movie name. So I choose bar instead. And so you have a choice on which one you want to use. Just make sure that you refer to their documentation, and they have example for you to use. So if you want to use pie chart or whatever, you can. For this, we're just going to do bar chart, so that way it's easy to see. Now, when you plot, you simply plot it with the Pandas module or library and using the data frame. But in order to really display its own graph window, we're going to use matplotlib. So these two work together, and it's going to take whatever that's plotted here, and it's going to display it by using the show method. And this function came from matplotlib, and we re-identified that as PLT. So you simply bring that down here and use the show function or method. So once I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and click File, save my program, make sure it's in the same folder as my CSV file, and I'm going to run. So as you see, the first display here is it's printing out our data frame, which is what we issue on line 8. Now, for a lot of times, if you don't print, it's still going to build your data frame. we print so that way we can see the content of our data frame. Now you can also make adjustment in your code to make it look a little bit cleaner, but this is the default standard display for our data frame. It tells us that our data frame consists of 23 rows and 7 columns. Keep in mind that this is a small data set. When you look at other data sets, there might be hundreds and thousands of columns and rows. So we want to make sure that you can also print just the top 10 by doing head 10, but and you can look at Pandas documentation for that. If you're taking data science classes, we cover that in the beginning courses for data science. And then for the next print, we're going to print the lowest. So the first one here is displaying the minimum value for gross revenue in the US. So it's only displaying the text that I tell it and the lowest value from that column. The second print here is going to give us a little bit more detail. So the lowest US gross revenue, which is my string that I had included. And since I created a list to store more information from that row, it's going to tell me the movie, right? The length, the hours. And notice that it's not very clean here. It's overlapping in the display. So you can also use some kind of format feature in string to be able to kind of clean it up. But it tells me that the Incredible Hulk is the movie. The length is 1 hour. The gross US revenue is this, and the world revenue is this. So it's giving you the entire row for the second print. And so with that, it's telling me that it's printing 1 row, right, out of the 7 columns. That's the dimension for this task. The next, we printed the highest using the max method, right? And again, it's showing only the value and the text that I put into string here. For the second part, we created a list to make sure that we print the entire row. So it tells me that the highest revenue is the Avengers, right? 3 hours. And the highest gross revenue in the US, right, which is 85 right here. And then the gross revenue for the world. So then once I have this information, right, then I would have the plot. And as you saw, I moved it earlier, so this should pop up if you have everything properly installed and coded. So with the bar graph, it shows in blue, and so it automatically kind of set up your reference for your graph here. You can also look into how you can add in additional parameter for your plot to make it a certain color, look a certain way, the scale, and so on, using their documentation reference and example. So here it shows the movie, and then you can also see, right, on how that will be for the gross in the US. Okay. So with that, what we would have is we would have some information on how to, or instruction on how to use external library or module, right? And these are industry approved and commonly used, so you often see that. And then how to be able to open up our CSV file using file operation, but using Panda. And then finding the min and the max, and then be able to graph it. Now you can drill down the data. Is this information accurate, right? Based on what is graphed, and so on. So this simply kind of show you on how to visualize your data and how to do simple analysis. using some built-in method from our libraries or our modules that we imported. And so I hope that you are able to practice this and explore further if you are proceeding to computer science and data science program. This is going to help you quite a bit as data analytics plays a very important role now in machine learning, AI, and so on. And so this concludes my video for Lab 3 exercise 16, and I hope you enjoyed the video.